Namaskar. My name is Poonam Gulalia, and in today's video we are going to be discussing 4 major terms and its implications. The 4 valuable terms in our fieldwork journey are as follows: review, feedback, assessment and evaluation. Repeating so that we are all tuned in and mindful of what is going to be discussed now. We are going to be discussing review, feedback, assessment and evaluation in the context of fieldwork. You would have seen in some of the earlier videos that we have been highlighting, stressing, elaborating and discussing the fieldwork journey of the student social worker. In this journey, the student is working in collaboration with peers, connecting with organizations in the field, engaging with communities, engaging with individuals and groups depending on the kind of fieldwork placement opportunity being provided to them. In the course of this fieldwork journey, one begins to understand, it is also reinforced at the time of the orientation program to students for fieldwork, that there are components, there are elements where it is essential to review the progress of the student, to revisit, to reflect on the concept, the understanding and the skills which the student is learning in the field. So initially we are discussing what is review, what is going to be reviewed and who will review the fieldwork experiences and the learnings from the field. So the initial person responsible for reviewing is the student themselves. Why is the student the primary person to review the fieldwork progress? One, because the students themselves are engaged in the field, they are going for fieldwork regularly, right? Secondly, because students are adult learners and are very much capable and conscientious of the kind of inputs they are making in the field and the kind of opportunities which are being provided to them. Third, they know that they have supervisors and mentors to guide them, to support them and to encourage them on this fieldwork journey. Fourth, they know that they also have fieldwork contacts, agency personnel, staff members of organizations and peers in this fieldwork journey. So reviewing one's own progress, reviewing one's own journey entails that we be mindful of where we have begun from. What is our starting point? The starting point of every student is not the same. It could be similar, but the fact remains that some students have had voluntary experience in the field, some of them have had experience of engaging with other organizations, with civil society organizations or with NGOs in their own previous lives, in their own previous journeys in the past. It is also possible that if we are undertaking fieldwork now as student social workers, we might have engaged with the field or with fieldwork during the pandemic period. It could be online engagement or it could be offline engagements. So we've all come from different backgrounds, but we need to understand our starting points. Some starting points of students could also be impacted if we think and reflect that there could be neighbors, friends, seniors, parents or extended family members who could be engaged in fieldwork in one form or the other, in one capacity or the other. So there are many different reasons why the starting point of students could differ and why we need to incorporate that when we review our own progress, so that we understand the meaning of starting point. It also implies the inclinations which students have, the passion with which we come to the program, right? The commitment which brings us to this profession, and our own personality types, our own understanding of what is the social context. Some students could come from either a rural background or an urban background or a tribal background. There could have been instances where they might have seen or experienced marginalization or exclusion or inclusion, or have seen vulnerability at close quarters. So many aspects involve an understanding of what a starting point could be. And why is one elaborating on this? Because it would impact the way we review and understand our own progress in the fieldwork space. The second important aspect which one should highlight here is that one needs to understand the fieldwork objectives of the program, that is the social work program. What are the objectives? What are the stated objectives? How does the fieldwork curriculum enumerate them? How does it define them? How does it delineate them? So an opportunity is provided before fieldwork placement for students to understand the fieldwork objectives which are laid out in the curriculum. The other important aspect when one reviews one's progress, as I mentioned a little while ago, is getting feedback from our mentors, from the staff members who are accompanying us in the field, from the agency personnel who are engaging with us during the course of the fieldwork journey. There could be paraprofessionals in the field whom we might be going to the field with, who might be part of our formal or informal process of networking in the field. So there are many stakeholders who contribute to our own learning, and therefore reviewing, reflecting, looking back, understanding and taking feedback from the different stakeholders becomes an essential component of our journey. Sometimes we must understand that the feedback may not always be positive. It may not always be comfortable. It may not always be what we want to hear or what we want to understand about our learning journey. It could be that some of the stakeholders in the fieldwork journey in one of the meetings might say to us that, you know, when I saw you talking to an elderly woman in the community, I noticed that you were not as sensitive as I thought you should be if you are a professional in the making. There could be another stakeholder who might say to another student in another context, obviously, that I saw you in the group work exercise at this particular institution at the daycare center, and I think I should let you know that unknowingly you were biased towards some particular group member, and that will impact our group work process, that will impact the dynamics, that will not enable us to achieve the objectives with which we have organized the program. So in this sense, there could be small or bigger review mechanisms, small elements of feedback, or larger processes requiring that you engage and understand the importance of feedback being provided. It could also be, as it happens when we conduct ourselves in the fieldwork, when we go out in the community, when we are walking down the roadside, when we are sitting next to a tea stall or a chopal or in a chopal or in a community center, that our body language or our facial expression or our non-verbal communication may reveal something different from what we are trying to say. We have all good intentions as student social workers to be sensitive, to empathize with the situation and the client group, to empathize with the client who is in front of us, to give our best possible selves in engaging with the communities that we work with. But it could be that unknowingly some of our baggage, some of our socialization, some of our personality type might impact our body language or our non-verbal communication, or we may be required to be silent and we may be vocal. We may be required to be vocal and we suddenly might become very withdrawn or clamped up. So there are many instances which might arise where we need review and feedback as an integral component of being on the journey. We need to remind ourselves that this review and feedback may at sometimes appear to be not very comfortable or might bring up certain connotations in us which may make us dislike the person who is in front of us. It's part of human behavior. It's part of psychology. We need to understand we are human even though we are professional in the making. So initially we might not like the response, but in due course of time one does hope that we will appreciate as student social workers that this review and feedback is being provided to us by more experienced people. They may not be more educated in that sense, but they are more experienced in the fieldwork spaces. Their experiential learning has taught them. On the job they have learned a lot of skills which we as student social workers would need to learn as we move along. So the feedback and the review also enables us to understand that we need to appreciate the context and the content of the field work which is happening with us, which is happening despite us when we are not there, and which we are part of when we go to the field. So the context of field work could be different from one student to the next. It could also be, we need to be mindful of this, that the context which was prevalent for our senior in the same organization in the previous year could be different from the context which shows up in front of us when we go for field work. Sometimes unknowingly students compare their fieldwork journey with those of their seniors, but one needs to remind oneself that not only the context could change, but some of the staff members could be different. Some of the agency personnel might have moved in the hierarchy. There could be a change in the teamwork which is engaging with us. The profiles of their work could be different over the years. So many aspects become necessary for us to understand the here and now of field work. It's a very hands-on work which we do. The learning by doing, which is a very, very prominent way of expressing and understanding field work, becomes essential for a student to understand. When we go back at the end of the day, when we review our work, when our peers make some remarks on the journey back home or back to the hostels, it's essential to understand where those remarks and reviews are coming from. Every review and feedback may not come to you in a very formal space. There could be informal spaces when you may be given or provided feedback. The more formal spaces, of course, will emerge in the weekly supervisory conferences, in the individual conferences which you will have with your respective supervisors, in the group conferences which are organized in the institution or the colleges where we are going to be studying. But the more informal feedbacks will come in other spaces as well. Having discussed quite at length the importance, the significance and the need for using review and feedback in a positive way, with a positive spirit and in a positive environment, one would like to come to the third essential term in the field work process called assessment. So assessment, when we think of the word, what are the terms which come to your mind? It would be good for you to also brainstorm with your peers and with your supervisors when possible on what is going to be assessed. In the classroom setting, assessment for coursework is through assignments, through communication in the class, through oral feedback, through your participation and your engagement in the classroom setting, and also through written examinations. So there are different components which constitute assessment in a classroom. What do you think are the components which are essential for assessment in the field? So field work setting is very different, as you are understanding, because it involves being hands-on, as I mentioned earlier, and also putting oneself out there, being there in the open. It is not going to be always a very prepared or a planned situation. There could be learning tasks delineated for you. A learning plan would definitely be devised between you, the organization, and your supervisor as to what you are going to be doing in a particular semester or in a particular year of fieldwork. And one element of assessment would definitely entail evaluating, assessing, and understanding which of those tasks you have been able to complete, which of those tasks or work assigned to you have been incomplete, and which of those tasks you were unable to address may be due to various factors. So the factors which are responsible or accountable for you being able to complete the tasks successfully in terms of the mandate provided by the organization, not so successfully within the objectives which were laid out, and those which were unable to be completed will all be assessed at the end of the year. The reasons, the circumstances, the context will all be part of the assessment process. There will definitely be space for you to have a dialogue with your supervisor at the end of the year as to why and how you were able to complete some of these tasks and work assigned, and some remained incomplete. While discussing this aspect, it is important to understand that not all tasks or work assigned will be individual. There could be some tasks which you might be given as a group. It could be that some tasks you were required to do along with your co-worker who was assigned with you to the fieldwork placement. It could be that some of the tasks you were required to do along with other paraprofessionals, with the field contacts, or along with a community person. It depends on the nature of the tasks, on the tasks which are given to you, and the context. So there is a lot of complexity involved in understanding this space. So we need to understand the objective and the subjective elements of assessment when we are discussing this aspect. One also needs to understand that assessment involves integrating the fieldwork objectives with the expected outcomes of the program. What were the objectives laid out for fieldwork and what were the expected outcomes for student learning will be matched at the end of the year. But it is a process and it will move from one semester to the next. It will move from 1 month to the next. There will be an ongoing process of assessment, and the supervisory conferences, the meetings in the agency, the meetings with the agency personnel which are organized by the supervisor, which are organized by the staff, will all be incorporated as part of the assessment process. I am sure that you also will understand that some element of feedback is also provided by our client groups, by the community leaders, by the resource persons, by the key people we have worked with in the course of our fieldwork journey. So, there are spaces where we organize feedback meetings at the end of each semester. There are also review meetings organized at the end of the first semester, which has major components like your understanding of social realities, your understanding of the skill sets which in due course you will imbibe, which are the skill sets you have begun learning, which are the skill sets you have begun practicing. Is it essential that we understand the use of self in social work practice? How we ourselves are conscious of our own self-development, self-awareness, identity. All these become essential components for review and feedback to begin with, and assessment and evaluation as we move along. So, if I may reiterate what I have already said, assessment and evaluation will go hand in hand. Assessment will lead to evaluation at the end of the year. The pattern of evaluation will be explained to you in the beginning of the year, so that you are well prepared for what you are getting into in the fieldwork journey space. The review which will be held at the end of the first semester, which will be discussed with you. There will be a written form which will be shared with you, so that you can do your own review and share it with the review which will be done by your supervisor. So, there is a partnership approach, there is a collaborative approach in learning which we encourage in fieldwork. Why do we encourage a partnership approach? Because the fact is that fieldwork itself is a collaborative process. Even though the evaluation and assessment is finally an individual element, we are all going to be graded as student social workers, but the learning spaces provided make it necessary for us to understand this partnership approach, and the fact that we will be working with people from different contexts, from varied backgrounds, with different skill sets. All this is incorporated in the final evaluation form. So, our personal and professional growth, our ability to work with people, whether they are individuals, groups or systems, our ability to incorporate and enhance and imbibe the skills for social work practice, and our relationships with various stakeholders whom I have mentioned, all become integral to our assessments and evaluations. What I would like to also explain this juncture is that we do not need to be afraid or intimidated of the fact that our work is going to be reviewed, or that we are going to be provided feedback which we have to incorporate if possible in our ongoing fieldwork journey. Sometimes students feel that my supervisor has given me a particular input based on my recording which I have submitted, or based on his or her having seen me in the field, and that I am under compulsion to incorporate this. One needs to see how, when is it possible for you to incorporate that, and we need to make it a part of our learning process. The written feedback, the oral feedback provided, both have their own value in terms of the engagement in the field. It's also possible that sometimes our ways of working in the field may not match with the supervisory style of teaching. There are spaces for discussion and dialogue, and it's a teaching learning space. So, we need to understand that the review and feedback mechanisms which has been incorporated in the fieldwork curriculum are such as to enhance the student learning. It is not a reward and punishment space. It is a collaborative and partnership approach which we encourage in the fieldwork journey. Do use this time for being in the field and for learning from different people. Their ways of teaching and learning may be different from the way you have been used to earlier. But this is a space, this is a profession where an interdisciplinary approach has also come in handy for many students. So we can learn from different disciplines, we can learn from different contexts, we can learn from different organization mechanisms, we can learn from different ways of functioning. So some organizations may be having a very direct approach of working with people, some may have adopted communities and are engaged with certain particular sectors like health or education or vocational training or livelihoods. There could be some which combine these sectors and have a more holistic approach of working. So the mandate of organizations could be different. The personnel who work with these organizations could come from different backgrounds. The experience of different personnel in these organizations could be varied. The hierarchy or the structure of the organizations could again be different. So sometimes we should not make too many comparisons between students or among fieldwork placement organizations. Whatever fieldwork placement organization has been given to us for our learning space, whether it's an urban setup or a tribal setup, whatever mechanisms are in place, whatever is the mission and vision with which the organization is functioning, or the field action project is working, or the government department is having, we should use that space for our learning. And in that space only the review and feedback is going to take place. There will be spaces for peer learning, there will be spaces for student seminars, there will be spaces when we come back to our own colleges and get feedback from others about what they are learning in their respective fieldwork journeys. That will all enhance our professional growth. Those are all inputs provided by our peers and our supervisors for our own learning. There will be spaces where maybe a supervisor might ask you that what have you learned in other courses which can enable you in your fieldwork practice, or what are your experiences from fieldwork practice which you can bring back to the classroom. So there will be many opportunities for you to learn and to grow as professionals, and one does hope that you will be able to use review, feedback, assessment and evaluation in a positive way, and use the opportunities available to ask the necessary questions, to engage with people who are being made available to you in your journey, and to arrive at a very holistic understanding of fieldwork. One does wish you all the best, and we do hope that we will be able to engage with you further and that you will be able to benefit from these videos which are being shared with you based on our own experiential learning. We wish you all the best and do stay in touch. Thank you so much.